Earlier this year, we had the law that was passed in Scotland that was going to assign a government minder to children from birth to 18 or 21. Now we're seeing that being proposed in the United States on the back of the Sandy Hook shooting. They're using that to push this through, and of course they have $160 million in funding from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education to put this through. They're very concerned about this. They're using the fact that this young man was reportedly homeschooled by his mother, so they say, we need to be able to penetrate the family and have government minders. Give us your take on what's going on in Scotland and the irony that the government would be doing this for the children when we see at the highest levels of government they've used child protective services to abduct children for their own use.
Well, I've been aware of it, David, since it first broke, but it's not something I've paid a lot of attention to because you know, I'm long gone far away, so it's of no great interest to me other than that, you know, it's just more government intrusion, let's be honest.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm deeply saddened that the independence vote was lost for Scotland there recently because I think a lot of things would have changed then. But, you know, the establishment doesn't, you know, they don't want this to happen, and they're gonna use everything at their disposal.
Absolutely.
Just to maintain the status quo, basically.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. It's good to hear your voice. It's John in Texas. I want to go to Larry in Illinois, but before I do, let me read you a little bit about this report that came out based on the Sandy Hook school shooting. Now, they said that they're concerned about siloed systems of education, physical health, and mental health care for children. In other words, areas that are private. When they talk about it being siloed, they say that it strongly implicates the need to assist parents with understanding and addressing the needs of children with complex development and mental health disorders. They say universal, and this is a report from James F. Tracy. We've interviewed him on the show many times. He did a good job in getting this out and analyzing it. So read some of the details from this report. They're calling for universal screening for behavioral health and developmental impairment for children from ages 21, from ages birth to 21. They want to assess to training and information concerning mental health issues for teachers, administrators, service personnel, pediatricians, and parents. In other words, they're going to train anybody that the child might come in contact with at school or a doctor or whatever. They want to train them as informants for the government. Just like we've seen people calling 911 and getting 2 people killed recently who had nothing but BB guns, basically calling in to the police and saying, in one case, even saying, I think it's probably a toy weapon, a fake gun. Nevertheless, the police showed up and shot this young man. In Walmart, it's even more egregious. The guy who called 911 kind of hyped it up for the police, and they wound up shooting the guy dead without even giving him a chance to put down the BB gun that he was going to buy in Walmart, that he was walking around the store with. So do we really want to have trained professionals who've been trained by Homeland Security and the Department of Education to finger parents? We just had a family we talked about the early part of the show. They had essentially their house broken into, the parents pepper sprayed, tasered, their children taken away because they were accused of having a messy house. Is that what we're going to see with this? Let's go on with some of the other things. They're going to address, of course, also the, quote, role of denial in illness. So if you think that everything is fine in your home and you don't need intervention from the state, maybe you're just in denial and we need to do something about it. That's all the more reason for us to get involved in your life. They want to have a better outreach to parents who have difficulties, quote, reaching out. So in other words, if you're not going to the government for help, if you don't have your kids in a government school, then you have difficulty reaching out. Perhaps you feel, quote, mistrust in the medical and educational systems. No doubt. I do. You should. If you don't feel mistrust in them, why should we trust them explicitly for everything? Why should we give them carte blanche in our life? That was never the way this country was founded. This country was founded with checks and balances because we understand that simply because somebody works for the government, they don't become an angel. They still have the same problems that everybody else does. If we had angels, then we wouldn't need that kind of oversight, but we don't. We can have good people in government. We can have bad people in government. We need to keep that arm's length there. They also want state consideration of an audit of existing homebound practices and procedures. They get very close to saying homeschool, don't they? But they say homebound practices and procedures. And finally, they say, this is the summary that we get from James Tracy. He says, in reality, the OCA report lays bare the groundwork for implementation of a nationwide program similar to the one presently being beta tested in Scotland called Getting It Right for Every Child, where they are going to where they've mandated an assignment of a named person, a government minder, for every child and young person, and a lead professional that renders the traditional family role of a distant caretaker. Understand that this is a globalist agenda because we see the same goals, the same tactics being used in Scotland that they are now proposing, piggybacking this off of the Sandy Hook situation and being funded by $160 million from our federal government. Let's go to a